Well, hello everyone, and welcome to. I guess this isn't my read through. I was going to give the read through introduction, but I recently finished reading through Vinland Saga with Jarkey Bacon, and it was great. You know, Vinland Saga is pretty good. Good manga. You should all read it if you haven't. But I am here this week with just myself because now that I've finished reading Vinland Saga, there's a bunch of YouTube videos out there that I want to watch. And I thought I may as well make some, I don't know, write some reviews and talk about them. So essentially what I've done is I've watched quite a few, maybe like 9 or 10 not random, like a bunch of YouTube videos made by some people I know that look interesting, and I'm going to review them. And this is heavily inspired by a series called Vinland Digest made by Shabes, where he goes over every week. He talks about like some of the best, and well, I guess not really the best. Essentially, all the videos he's watched in that week, and he'll like categorize them into like not so good, decent, and then like great or something like that. And I've recently started watching those like a few months ago, and I thought it was such a cool series and such a good idea. And I don't know, I thought I'd just do something like that. So check him out. I'll put the link in the description. It's very interesting. If you make YouTube videos, if you're interested in YouTube videos, watch it. It's great. Anyway, so that's essentially what I'm going to be doing here, but just about Vinland Saga videos, because there's honestly not that many out there as far as I could tell. But yeah, so this is just a test, I guess. It's really strange recording by myself without Bacon, but here we are. And so I don't know if this turns out well. I might make future videos, but we'll see. But the gist of it is that I'm going to be spoiling all the content of these YouTube videos. So if I were you, I would check them out before you watch me talk about them, because I'm going to talk about all the points they cover, the way they present stuff, and just comment on everything I can think of that I find interesting, at least. And yeah, so I'd say this is more of like a not review, more of me like reflecting on a video than me like recommending a video. So I would definitely go watch them before I talk about them. But anyway, I should also mention that I'm using the same visual editing style as Kyle Entertainment here in his what did he even call it? Anime Digest? Oh, this is not Anime Digest. He has a series of videos about this pretty similar concept. So check him out if you want to see a similar type of video as well. What else do I have to say in this introduction? What have I got? I would probably give a warning that this is probably going to be a bit unorganized. Like I've got notes for every video that I've seen, but they're all pretty unorganized. There's no real structure to them, but if that's a bit of an issue, then maybe if I do this next time, I can structure them better. But anyway, let's get started then. So the first person I want to talk about, I want to talk about 2 videos made by itsMyre is his channel name, and I've heard about him quite a bit. Like I've seen him comment on a few of my Vinland Saga read through videos with Bacon. We talked about his briefly about, or at least Bacon like raised one of his ideas about something that happens in chapter 189 with the with Miseg Pikwe seeing the future basically, and then Bacon told me about Mia's thoughts about the meta narrative and all that, and I found that pretty interesting. But I hadn't seen any of his videos, and that was, I guess, until last week, where we had the Vinland's Finest collaboration thing, where a bunch of people made videos, and itsMyre made one, or Mia is, I guess, what I'm going to call him now. And it was great, so I thought, oh, you know what, I'll check out the rest of his videos. So here we are. And the first one is, these are a bit out of order, but I guess I'll talk about them in the order that I watched them, which is Vinland Saga 192 Chapter Review and Analysis, Embarking on a New Voyage. So this is 43 minutes long, and it came out in April of 2022. And overall, I thought this was really good. This is like a, I don't know, it's a very dense like analysis of one particular chapter, and I like it a lot. But the first thing is I need to comment about his mic, because his microphone is like I don't know, it's not bad, but it's like the first impression you get when you hear it is that there's like a bit of static and stuff, and it's a bit strange. But the reason I bring this up is that I think it's like an initial barrier to watching this video, but when you get into it, you completely forget about it. Like when you've watched this video for like 10 minutes, it's like indistinguishable from a normal mic, like a normal high quality mic. So I don't know, just a note to put out there. So don't be put off by that if you're considering watching this. But in terms of the presentation style, it's very simple. It's him essentially just stepping through the chapter like a PowerPoint, and there's a black background. There's some cool music. I really like the music, honestly. It like sets a very like calming atmosphere, which is probably pretty useful for such a deep dive, like a 40-minute video about like one chapter. So I like it a lot. And it is interesting because when I like, I've made a few unscripted videos now, and there was a point where I considered, do I add music to this, to make it a bit more digestible for a viewer? And I don't know, I decided against it, but this is kind of like convincing me a bit, because the music felt very appropriate. Like it even when the music like swells or like gets to like a high point, it kind of emphasizes your point, or his points. Should I say first person or not? I don't know. You know what? I think I'm going to swap to first person as though I'm talking to the author here. But yeah, so I guess when he oh Jesus, and there I go, immediately going back to third person. But yeah, when he uses the music, it kind of works to emphasize his point sometimes, and I like that. What else have I written? I said the music choice at the end is perfect. Oh, that's it. Yeah, so I'm making a point essentially that, yeah, essentially he ends the video with the Vinland Saga's ED, the second ED from the anime, as like the background music, and like it works very metatextually. Like it's like, oh yeah, the video's ending, it's just like an anime ending, I'll use the ending, and it works in that way. But I think it's the dialogue, like that's the only part of the video where there's music with dialogue, and it kind of took me out of it a bit, where I was trying to focus on what he was saying, then I could also hear the dialogue from the music. But so I don't know, I guess my suggestion for an improvement would be to use that same song, because I think like metatextually it just works so well, but maybe use part of it with either less lyrics or like more less overpowering lyrics in a way. But anyway, so yeah, I guess that's all the presentation. In terms of the actual points, what have I got? So my first thing is that something I've noticed when watching this, and also just like binging a few like chapter reviews from Kyle Entertainment and Bacon, is that everyone seems to think that this arc is ending soon. Like this final like 1,000-year voyage, like he brings it up in this video that it's probably the last arc in Vinland Saga, and I get it, like based on what I heard from Bacon, which is that itsMyre said that this is he is wrapping up the story here, so I guess it makes sense. But I don't know, I never got that impression when I was reading it, that the story is wrapping up. Like it still feels like there's so much more you could do, and it really doesn't feel final at all to me. But it's just interesting that you brought this up, and a bunch of other people brought it up. Now, another interesting point you make is that what have I written? There's a neat connection to Asklad, where Thorfinn is making small decisions that his men don't seem to understand, and it leads to his men turning on him. Yeah, I guess that's just an interesting point. I'd never considered that before. There's also, in regard to the point that Vinland does not belong to Thorfinn alone, which is something Ivar says in this chapter, I'd never considered that this could be read as Vinland belonging to the natives. So the way I took this point was that Ivar is pointing out to Thorfinn that, I guess not even that, even more like itsMyre here is pointing out that maybe Thorfinn's method of leading things shouldn't be the only way, and that there should be more of a democratic aspect or something. But I don't know, I think it's interesting that you could also read this as oh, you know what, this Thorfinn guy, he doesn't own Vinland. There's people already here, and they own it as much or probably even more than you do. So, interesting point. So, next up, you made a really cool point about how you see two paralleled facial expressions, or two interactions, I guess, between Thorfinn and Ivar, where they're confronting each other in chapter 182, and then now in this chapter that the video is based on, 192, where in 182 you've got Thorfinn and Ivar are basically arguing about, well, no, it's not really an argument. I guess Ivar is just arguing at Thorfinn about how it's normal for men it's normal for men to like war, and that Thorfinn is the odd one out. And in that position, you've got Thorfinn clearly seeing Ivar's statement as very ignorant or very like ill-informed or not very well thought out, and because of that, Thorfinn looks up to him with disappointment, like on his face. Whereas in this chapter, what you get is you got Thorfinn who is chastised by Ivar because he's lost the 13 people at Markland, and he doesn't even look up at Ivar because he's ashamed, and Ivar is making a good point about Thorfinn's way of leading things. So that was an interesting parallel that I'd never considered. So cool job and good job. You also raise an interesting theory about the native people being forced out of Markland. So the idea is that essentially the native, oh sorry, not the native people, I guess the 13 people who were at Markland, you make an interesting point that they were forced out to leave by the natives, and then all those arrows were left as a warning, and that maybe the people of Markland, they left on a ship to try and go back to Vinland. So this is a great theory compared to I had this crazy theory that which I still somewhat hope comes true, which is that the people of Markland were sick, and then the natives came and took the 13 people to heal them, and they left arrows behind as like a because of some initial confrontation they had with them, but eventually got resolved. Oh, no, anyway, your point is way more interesting that they got forced out, and you've got the people of Markland shooting arrows at no one, just at the floor, just to show that weapons can be used to prevent war. Like it just ties in with that idea a bit, which is something I hadn't considered. So I thought that was interesting. You also raise an interesting point about a conflict that could happen. So if the Markland people do die on their way to Vinland, then who's at fault here? Because these the Mi'kmaq people didn't intend for them to die on this journey. They just wanted them to leave. So who's to blame here? Like, how do you resolve this blameless conflict? So I don't know, interesting theory. Finally, you talk about the 1,000-year voyage and the meta-narrative. So as far as I understand, I should probably, I'm going to watch all the other videos, but you talk about how the meta-narrative is that Thorfinn will fail, but there's an importance in living by his ideals despite his failure. So the 1,000-year voyage of his ideals to the present day, that's what's being shown by this 1,000-year voyage title. It's a message from itsMyre telling us that he still thinks that the present needs to hear this message. And despite Thorfinn's end, what matters is the voyage of his ideals. So that was interesting. Then you say you made 7 pages of notes, which is great. I love that. Notes are awesome. And I think just generally you covered everything I could think about with this chapter, so I like that a lot. So well done, great video. Alright, so next up is Vinland Saga 189 chapter review and analysis, Visions of Our Tragic Future. So this is another video by itsMyre. It's 42 minutes long, and it came out January of this year, so 2022. So this is the chapter 189, where we get 1,000 years in the future. We get itsMyre, he sees the future, and it's extremely controversial from what I hear. At least to me, it was very controversial. I had a big discussion with Bacon about it, but I was interested to see how you addressed all this. And I am very pleasantly surprised by this video. It was great. I got a great new insight from it. So you raise I guess one of the first questions you raise is, why does itsMyre show the definitive future, and why not show something vague? And you put it really nicely. You say that itsMyre is desperate, deprived, and afraid. So no matter what, he's going to see something that's going to echo the fears that he's having in his mind about these invaders coming to his land. Because he's very desperate here, and he's being deprived of food and water, and he's inhaling fumes and everything, and so the point is that no matter what, like even if the vision he gets is vague or something along those lines, he's still going to be basing his actions off something that comes from the future. So there's two scenarios where, also I'm not sure if this was directly in the video, if this is just my extrapolation here, but like there's two scenarios here. One that if he sees a vague vision of the future, then the audience is still going to have the exact same issue that itsMyre is basing his actions off vague notions of the future. So like in this scenario, his actions are going to be less justified because the actions he takes are based off things that are his interpretation rather than something very clear. So the other perspective is that if the vision is clear instead, like what we actually get in the chapter, then we're going to get the same result as if the visions were vague, where he's going to base his actions off the things he sees. But now the audience themselves can also take a message from the vision. So instead of wasting it and making it something vague, YukiMura utilizes this to give us something, which is that we're told that Thorfinn will fail and that the war will come to Vinland eventually. Or something along those lines, maybe not exactly that. But so essentially what YukiMura has done by making this a concrete vision of the future rather than vague is that he's used it as an opportunity to show the audience something relevant. So yeah, that's a really interesting point you made in this video that kind of changed my view a little bit, or at least refined my view a bit on this chapter as a whole. But that, to me, then raises the question of why base itsMyre's actions in the story on future knowledge at all? Like, it's just like, to me, it's really strange that like, anything that happens now of him going forward is going to be based on future knowledge, whether it was vague or whether it was realistic. But yeah, you made me think, I don't know if this is directly in the video, but this is what you made me think, which I like a lot, which is that no matter what, itsMyre as a character, he can't be certain of the things he's seeing. Maybe he will believe he's certain, but from a character perspective in the world, like someone seeing him, they can't be certain that he's correct in his view, right? No matter how clear his vision is of what he sees. So if it is his actions that doom Vinland in the end, then the doom is going to be based off his biases of the interpretations he makes from like his character's perspective. So I guess in other words, if Vinland fails because of itsMyre, it's going to fail because of the biases that he holds, not because of his knowledge of the future. And this ties back with the point you were making about how itsMyre was going to see something. He's in a deprived state, etc., etc. And no matter what he sees, it's going to feed and reflect his thoughts as a person. So I just, that was really interesting. Like, this really makes it, like this really justifies the chapter to me, and I came around because of this. Like, just to summarize, I guess, because I have like rambled a bit here, but the point is that regardless of him seeing the future, itsMyre, if he causes the downfall of Vinland, it's because of him as a character, not because of what he sees. And I think that's really compelling. But yeah, anyway, that's the main point I wanted to address with this video. It was a really great video. I'd recommend it to anyone. Anything else do I have to say? I guess, yeah, the music again, really good, just like the other one. Especially at the end where like you're recapping itsMyre seeing the nuke and then can't believing that humans made it, and then the music is like swelling and I'm like, oh, I feel the emotions of this recap. It works really well. But I guess another thing about the music is that it suddenly stops at 36 minutes, like abruptly. I don't know, it's a weird editing thing. What else? And then at the end of the chapter, you end with like Canute hype, and you're like, hell yeah, we get next chapter. We're gonna see Canute point of view, and me in the future, knowing that we don't get that, and we just see Canute for like 2 panels. It's just funny to hear. But anything else I'm gonna say? Well, let me just read through my notes here. So, oh, you make a point about the framing of the gun being the same way that YukiMura frames swords. And I thought, I've heard that before. I'm not sure if it was maybe from another one of your, like the other video I saw of yours, or maybe it was from like Bacon and Kyle talking about it, but either way, it's a great point. And I guess in regard to that point, I think your video would benefit from showing examples of that. Like, and like, I think this is the only point where it would really benefit it, because other than this, I really enjoy your style of just going through the chapter, like, page by page with a black background. Like, it's a cool aesthetic, and it really feels like, oh, I'm about to get a deep dive from a manga expert, you know? It feels great. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe if it's also, like, instead of adding the example panels into the video, because that could be hard to edit and stuff and render or whatever, but you could just add it to the description somehow. Like, if you ever want to reference, like, a certain visual or a certain panel that you don't want to like extract from another chapter, you could just put it in the description. But yeah, anyway, just feedback. But overall, great video. Love this. itsMyre, you know what, guys? Watch his videos. They're very interesting. So next up, let me have a look. Oh boy, okay, let's talk about Kyle Entertainment. So I've got 3 of his videos, and we will talk about them in the order that I watch them. So the first one I watched was Why the Vinland Saga Anime Adaptation is Disappointing. So this is a 40-minute video, came out many years ago in October of 2019. And I know that Kyle is very ashamed of this video, at least he wants to private it or whatever, but I don't think he should. But I guess overall, this is I would say this is a bad video. Like, I think I would agree with Kyle. Like, there's a lot of bad takes in this, in my opinion. I would say that the voice quality is significantly worse than what he has these days. So good job, Kyle. You've improved. But I mean, it's very similar to what I was saying about Mia's videos, which is that, like, I noticed it initially, and I'm like, oh, you know what, the voice quality isn't like production level quality or whatever. It's not professional, like an extreme professional YouTuber, like millions of subscribers or whatever. But when you're in it, you've seen 10 minutes of it, you completely forget about the quality of the audio. So you really, I don't know, it's just a barrier for entry rather than like hindering the actual points you're making. So it doesn't really matter in the end. But anyway, my next point is that I said, this is a pretty amazing video because you touch on pretty much every bit of like what I would consider bad criticism, where you're talking about author and studio intentions, the purpose behind characters, you're talking about bad pacing and bad animation, all these tropes that you hear in like bad, at least in my opinion, like bad, I don't know, video essays where I'm like, oh, really? They're going to talk about this again? And like unjustified kind of critiques that I find annoying. Yeah, so I guess the next thing is that I started writing counterpoints for I started writing counterpoints for the first like 10 minutes when I was watching, but there were too many things for me to counter, so I just stopped. But if you're interested, I'll do like a few hour like rebuttal of it or whatever, but I don't know. I think you're probably beyond this, but one other thing to note is that in this video he puts a retraction in the description, which I just think is so cool. Like, such a good idea. Like, I think it'd be more interesting. Like, I think everyone should do this. Like, a few years in the future, if you're making like a big emotive point, like Kyle's done in this video, it'd be so cool to like see people's updated thoughts on their old videos. You know, cool thing. So well done, cool retraction. But I guess in the retraction, he also still sticks by a lot of the points that he's made. It's just more about the presentation of the points and the delivery of the narration, all that. Which fair enough. But oh boy, let me see what I've written here about this great video. So the video starts with a bunch of I guess this is something this is something you address in the retraction, which is that the video starts with a bunch of random sound bites that I've heard when I'm in your stream, but I have no context for what they are. So when I hear them in a video like this, and I can only imagine for a random person seeing this video, they'd be like, what the hell is this? So it kind of, the note I wrote is that it kind of feels like I'm watching the credits before you see an anime movie where they got like a bunch of unrelated studios all just having their logos show up. That's what it feels like when I'm watching the beginning of this video. But anyway, you address this in the retraction, so yeah. Okay, before I get into any of the points, which honestly I don't know how many I'm going to try and talk about, but this video reminded me of why I started watching Kyle Entertainment videos, where it's like a very combative and sarcastic attitude, like in the video, where it's like you're one man against the world, and you've got your way of enjoying media, and you're kind of like proving to everyone that they're wrong about the way they're doing things, and you've got the right way, and it's very like tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic, and I like it a lot. It was a good flashback to when I started watching Kyle Entertainment videos back in the day. So I guess this video, just to go over the points you kind of raise, or at least the ones I wrote down, you talk about how the anime goes chronologically, which undermines the message behind some of the mini arcs, which I'm not sure that I agree with. And I guess my real rebuttal here isn't really with the points you're making, but the fact that I watched the anime and I got, like, it was effective to me. So, like, if it was effective to me, then, like, how can it be bad, you know? Like, from a, like, I could see you like kind of frame this video as like a very objective kind of like, oh, obviously they're bad because of this. And I don't know, when I was watching it, I enjoyed it a lot, and none of these things stood out to me as bad. So I don't know, but that was the first point you make. The second point is about censorship. Yep, fair enough. I just didn't notice it when I was watching the anime. The third point is about the anime pace being slow and the manga pace being fast, which is good. Which I also don't agree with. I enjoyed the slow pace. At one point you say the animation is bad, and I don't agree with that either. I thought it looked very good, compared to a bunch of other things I've seen at least. What else is there? I do enjoy your, I think you also mentioned this in the retract, maybe this whole thing's pointless because the retraction is maybe I should have covered the retraction somehow, but you mentioned, you use the Berserk OP for the title cards. And I don't know, I like that, it works, it's a good bit of comedy that like kind of fits in with the message of the video, with the adaptation being bad, without saying anything. Like it's good stuff. It is loud though, it's startling, you know, my goodness. Now, I've written down a few points that are worth considering, my goodness, so it's not all bad. I wrote that the anime studios should focus on creating original stories rather than adaptations. So that's a point you made. I think that's pretty interesting. Like, it certainly is strange how like 90% or whatever of all anime that are made are all based on manga. Like, I wonder why that started that way and why it's continued that way. But I don't know. I mean, this is something I can get behind. But then again, I love anime adaptations, like things like Mob Psycho, where it's like the animation itself just elevates the story and it works so well. Another point you make is about the omission of the slave girl, the rape scene with Thorfinn with those 3 panels. And yeah, I mean, I had a different interpretation of it when I was going through my read through, but I like your interpretation, and you also cover this better, I think, in the more recent Vinland's Finest video. But yeah, I think I think that's a very strange thing to leave out of the anime. But the final point, I guess, which is I think worth considering, is that you talk about, like, this is something I really like actually, which is also addressed in the Vinland's Finest thing, so maybe I'm like talking about that a bit, but you talk about how Thorfinn and Aslak are both being on the hill at the end of the Ragnarok chapter, and how that shows like that ironically the closest person that Thorfinn can relate to in Aslak's band is Aslak himself. And so this is a similar point you made in the Vinland's Finest video, but it's still like you do a good job conveying it here, even in the other points, like mixed in with all these bad, in my opinion, points in this video. This point still stands true. I've got another, I don't know how negative I want to be. I have another thing that I point out, which is that at around 18 minutes in this video, you say that you point out the panel where Thors is being sad while everyone else cheers is great in the manga, but then goofy in the anime, and I just thought it was the exact opposite, where I think it's just done better in the anime, and it's a lot more serious in that context. But I don't know, what's the point of bringing all this up? There's a lot of things I don't like about it, but the gist of it is that this is a very early Kyle Entertainment video, which I love. Like, just if you put aside all these points, I enjoyed watching this. It was a fun video. Kyle Entertainment is very good at making videos that are enjoyable. I like his narration. His comedy is fantastic, and he's only gotten better to this day. So overall, bad video, but has all the good elements of a Kyle Entertainment video. So next up is another Kyle Entertainment video, analyzing Thorfinn and Gudrid's relationship. So this is a 6-minute video. Can't believe it. That's the shortest Kyle Entertainment anything I've ever seen. And it came out in December of 2020. So unbelievable. You should go back to short videos. These are great. So overall, this was a good video. It was interesting. The first point is that I found it funny how you referred to her name as Gudrid, I think, in this video, and it's just funny because I do know you correct this later on, because I've been like going through all the Kyle Entertainment and secondary EMT videos about Vinland Saga, and just hearing all the changes in the, like, I'm not watching them in any chronological order, so I just hear them as random like changes in pronunciation as I'm going through, and I find it so funny. So I guess this video was back when you were calling her Gudrid, but here we are. So the gist of the video is that Thorfinn and Gudrid's early relationship wasn't explored very much because there was that time skip, right? And I generally just agree with this this perspective. Like I am a fan of that time skip in general. I thought it worked very well, but having now read past that time skip, I do agree that yeah, we just really don't get much of their relationship, and it would have been good to get more. In terms of the presentation of this video, like how you present the ideas, it's definitely not as flashy and high quality as like your more recent videos, but it gets the point across well enough. Like I think it's a perfectly serviceable video. Like this is not something you should take down. Like I thought this was perfectly decent. I could understand a lot more if you wanted to take down the previous one I was talking about, but this one I think is perfectly fine. I guess another presentation point is that the thumbnail, and I guess a lot of your thumbnails, they also, like this one particularly was a screenshot directly from the manga, and some people might think this is bad or like very too bland or anything, not attention grabbing, but I thought I'd point out that the reason I started watching your videos was that I was looking up, I essentially wanted to find someone who talked a lot, like who was an expert in the like Attack on Titan manga, because I'd never really looked up any content particularly about the manga. So one day I typed in like, you know, Attack on Titan manga analysis or something, and your like top 10 Attack on Titan moments popped up, and the thumbnail was a screenshot from the manga, and that was it. And I'm like, oh hell yeah, okay, I'm gonna watch some video by this expert now, you know, he's used a manga thumbnail, and it was a complete spoiler as well, so I'm like, this man is not afraid of spoiling the anime onlys. So I don't know, it depends what type of audience you want to curate. Like if you're interested in getting, in only attracting like hardcore manga fans, then yeah, just putting a screenshot from the manga is going to be great. But I don't know, if you want to attract a more general audience, then yeah, your more recent thumbnails where they're highly edited and attention grabbing, they're probably better. But yeah, interesting point. Another thing, you spoiled Naruto for me, which is great. It's a very minor spoiler, but I thought that was funny. Classic Kyle spoiling me for everything. What else is there? Yeah, so I guess the real gist of the video is that you're making a comparison between three relationships. So you're comparing the Thorfinn and Gudrid relationship to Casca and Griffith, and Naruto and Hinata. So you talk about how you like the Casca-Griffith relationship and not the Naruto-Hinata one, which makes sense from what you described. And your conclusion is that although we do see a few small moments in the Gudrid-Thorfinn relationship, overall the time skip just led to a lot of missed potential. So yeah, I just generally agree. You know, it's a nice simple point. You do it in 6 minutes. You made one like very compelling point, which is about how we get a lot of characterization of both the characters individually. Like we get a lot of Thorfinn, we get a lot of Gudrid, and that's why they're the first and second best characters in Vinland Saga. But we don't know anything about them together as a character, right? Like we don't really know how they interact together when they're in a relationship, and that's a very compelling point that stuck with me. So well done. So overall, I really like the fact that this is a short video. Like it's very to the point, very like clear, and there's no padding whatsoever. Like I think like you should do more, not all the time. I enjoy your long videos quite a bit, honestly, but every now and then, you know, do a short video. I'm sure they're quicker to get out, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Yeah, the last point I'd say is that you've come a long way, especially like these two videos that I've talked about so far. Your more recent ones are a lot better, so well done. You've improved a lot. So I have one more Kyle Entertainment video to talk about, which is Vinland Saga and Living in Berserk's Shadow. So the goal of this video is basically to talk about why Vinland Saga is compared to Berserk and why you think it's an unfair comparison. So overall, I think this is a 12-minute long video, and it's from September of 2019. So I think this is the oldest Vinland Saga video that I have seen, I guess. Maybe the oldest one you've made, I'm not sure. That maybe besides chapter reviews or something, but but yeah, my overall thoughts on this video is that it's good and it has a interesting premise. Like, I think this is definitely something that I'd always been interested in, just to see like what, like, were there comparisons to Berserk? Like, why were there comparisons? Just an interesting concept. But I think you run into a very similar issue as you did in the Why Vinland Saga Anime is Disappointing video, where you're talking a lot about the author's intentions, and I'm sure you probably don't believe in this like type of criticism anymore, but it took me out of it a bit when I was watching this. So the video is structured where you've got 5 different points of comparison. So you're talking about the medieval setting, you're talking about the war representation, early structure, protagonists and antagonists. So in terms of the medieval setting, sure, that's a valid comparison. I agree. Sounds pretty reasonable. Then you talk about the war representation. And I don't know, you made it was an interesting point, how you talk about how Berserk, as a story, it acknowledges that the reader already knows that war is brutal. So instead of making the message about the war itself, it just uses that assumption that the reader knows this to tell other interesting thematic stories within the broader context of war. So interesting point. Then you also, like, throughout the video, at one point you quote that there's people that argue that any representation of war, no matter how horrific, is a pro-war message. And that to me is very unintuitive, and I can't see how that's possibly the case. I haven't seen the video you're referencing, but if I was to make a guess, then I would say that they're saying that the fact that you enjoy watching horrific depictions of war, no matter how horrific, then that kind of incites or promotes war. But I don't think that's the case. There are definitely depictions of war that are terribly, like, they can, regardless of how much you enjoy seeing it, they can emotionally, like, the emotional thing that sticks with you can be a negative one. Like, essentially that point was just very unintuitive, but it was interesting to bring up nonetheless. So then you talk about the comparisons between Berserk and Vinland Saga in regard to the early structure. And I thought this was the weakest part of the video. You kind of skimmed over it, and I didn't really even understand what similarities you were pointing out between the early structure. But yeah, that was the early structure point. Then you talk about the comparison of the protagonists, so Thorfinn and Guts. And you point out a bunch of like similarities between them, and I acknowledge that there are similarities, and I acknowledge all the ones you point out are valid similarities, but to me they feel very arbitrary. Like, you could list an equal number of comparisons between any two characters in the world, and to me it just feels like these these similarities you're pointing out that aren't overall, they just don't make Thorfinn and Guts feel anything like similar characters to me in any way. But another point you make about the protagonists is that you claim that itsMyre intentionally designed Thorfinn differently than Guts because he knew he would have to address the connection, that people are going to draw in their minds. And I don't know, to me, this is something you'd have to put evidence for, because I just didn't find that, that never crossed my mind that they were in any way related. So I don't know how many people that would occur to, so I don't know. Then you talk about the antagonists, and you make a similar point about Griffith. And the only reason I'm fine with this point is the fact that I agree with it. Like, when I was reading, it did feel very, I was reminded of Griffith quite a bit. So I don't know, I can let that point pass. But then you claim that it was itsMyre's intention to subvert the Canute-Griffith connection. And again, you just need to put evidence for that, because I have no reason why that would be why should I believe that? Yeah, so I guess that's all the 5 points to address. More presentationally, there's the first song you use in this video, it's like some classical song. I think that works really well. But the rest of the songs are a bit weird, like weird choices. They're very quiet as well, and I don't know, it's just strange. But what else? I guess just generally, overall, the video has a clear structure where you're going to be going over these 5 comparison points, but it's very unclear when I was watching over the video, like the distinction between these 5 points. Like, I think when I was because I watched this twice, when I first watched it, I completely missed you talking about the early structure. Like, it just went over my head. I thought it was just part of the war representation subpoint. So I don't know, maybe making it a bit more. I don't know why I'm telling you to improve it as though you're gonna remake this video, but like, I don't know, put chapters in the video like with the timestamps, or put like a title or something mid video to kind of separate the points a bit. That would have improved it. But overall, this was a fun, like, it was an interesting video. I enjoyed watching it. Step back from talking about the author's intentions, I guess, if you want to make me more happy, but I'm sure you already do that. So that's it, Kyle Entertainment. Next up, Jarkey Bacon. So, Vinland Saga, Making Fiction Real. So this was a 20-minute video from February of 2020. So what is that? 2.5 years ago, pretty much. Long time. So overall, this is a decent video, I would say. Pretty good. So in terms of the presentation, so Bacon is a master of presentation, let me say. Like this is a great presentation. So first of all, the thumbnail. I have a big thing I want to say about Bacon's thumbnails, actually, because firstly, they're really good. Bacon makes, or I guess if I'm talking to you directly, Bacon, I know you're listening right now, you make great thumbnails. I know you know that I say that because I say it all the time. But I think they elevate your videos so well. Like, to me, when I see a Bacon thumbnail, or when I see your thumbnails, they make me think like you're a YouTube, like a big time YouTube with millions of subscribers, you know? Like, you're taking, like, for instance, in this video, wait, let me get it. Let me double check what, yeah, so you've taken this image of Thorfinn, you've colored it, you've got the nice, really cool framing with the background color as well, like blending in with his color scheme. Looks like there's a nice lighting shining on it. It just makes it look like this is a big professional like studio that's worked on this thumbnail. And it gives authenticity to the points. Like, it gives you credibility when you're making points, because it's like, oh, you know, this guy has this great thumbnail, you know, we got to trust his points. So stick to it. The thumbnails are definitely worth it. Anyway, another thing is that you have a cool intro screen where you're like this loud music and you're showing a logo, and I think it's just really effective. What else is there? Oh, I guess talking about impressions. So this, I guess it's funny how I've talked about this in every video, but your audio sound, like, you get that cool intro with the music and everything. The thumbnail looks fantastic, you know, you're like, wow, it's a big time YouTuber. But then I heard the actual audio recording, and for some reason it sounds a bit hollow. Which, I mean, I don't know how to describe audio, but I think there's like a jarring difference between the quality of the editing and the visuals and the presentation and everything, but then the audio quality is like slightly off. So it kind of, like, if you could improve, I don't know why I'm saying this, but because like in future videos, it's fantastic. Like your most recent video with the Vinland's Finest thing, it's overall, it's fantastic in its audio quality, but I don't know, for some reason, these early videos, it wasn't. So well done, you know, you've improved on that regard. What else is there? I think in terms of the narration, I think it's pretty good. I mean, I'm also talking about, I think this is your first Vinland Saga video, so it's a long time ago as well. You've all these points you've improved on, so there's no real point. But I guess in this video, your narration could be improved a bit. Like, you should probably emphasize some things a bit more. Some of your pauses feel a bit too long. But this is, again, something that is fantastic in later videos, so I wouldn't worry about this. I always love Bacon's choice of music. You have great choices of music. This one, you use the Steins Gate song, and it works so well. And overall, the editing is great, you know. It's a Bacon video. What do you expect? It's going to be great editing. And even 2.5 years ago, you know, he was making great videos. So great editing. But now, in terms of the points, I haven't got too many to point out here. You talk about how you bring up the women having similar faces, and you make these cool comparisons, which I thought was cool. And you make this edit between, like, going from Gudrid to Estrid, I think, or maybe the other way around. And I think that works pretty well. But maybe it's a bit over the top, because it's like you're changing one step at a time, and I'm like, I don't know, but I thought it was a cool idea anyway. But my main criticism of this video is, like, why I think it's decent rather than, like, very good, is that it feels like it's, like, you got the title of the video, which is Vinland Saga, Making Fiction Real. And it feels like, okay, so this video is going to be talking about how, like, down to earth and real Vinland Saga is, and that will be, like, the focus of the video. But it kind of feels like the video is a a mix of like of you praising the Vinland Saga series and then critiquing it as well, rather than focusing on like why it's so realistic or like so down to earth or whatever. So I think the video would probably benefit from taking out any critiques, because like there's no the title of the video and the thumbnail and everything, it doesn't suggest that there's going to be any criticism in this. It's just going to be more about like the praising of it or explaining why you think it's so real. So I would have just taken out any critiques from this, just like I'm critiquing it right now. How ironic. So it feels like the thesis of this video is that Vinland Saga brings the Vikings, which are usually distant and mythological, and it brings them down to earth. And you kind of say this in the introduction, and then I think you like if you've read Vinland Saga like I have, then you kind of get the point of the video immediately. So I guess this is more aimed towards people who haven't seen Vinland Saga. So in that regard, it's probably better for them. But the last point about just general points, I guess, here before the weird miscellaneous points, is that is this I'm assuming this is your first video, which is like incredible. This is a very well made first video, if that's the case. And I can completely like put aside all the criticism I've said so far, because like it's insane that you got something of this quality as your first video, or even just so early on in your like scripted video and edited videos career, quote unquote. So I can see why, like, if this is your first Vinland video, then I can see why it feels so unfocused, like I said in my previous criticism about the like praising and the critique, which is that you probably had a lot to say about Vinland Saga. You're like, you know what, I want to make a video about it. Let me just talk about a bunch of stuff. Who knows if I'll make future videos about it. So I completely understand. But now I just got a bunch of miscellaneous points. Let me have a look. Yeah, actually, you use a bunch of clips from the anime, and they just look so crisp. Like I just forgot how like good the anime looks. What else is there? You showed a clip of Yukimura, or I guess it's a photo of Yukimura in a Viking outfit, and that was really cute. You make a good comparison of the improved art from like book to book, and you make 3 good comparisons in Floki, Thors, and Askeladd. But then you make a comparison of Sigurd, which is the comparison that starts this section, like this point you're making. But to me, the improvement in that, like the good example you showed wasn't actually that good, and it was like one of the worst Sigurd panels I've seen. So that was pretty funny. And you also make fun of Fatty's fart joke, but it's just peak comedy, so you know why you're making fun of that peak comedy. But overall, decent video. Considering it's your first video, it's a fantastic first video. If that is the case, if it's not the case, then correct me. But fantastic first video. Decent in terms of comparing it to more recent videos. But that's it. Vinland Saga, making fiction real. Great title as well. But next up, In Defence of Hild, More Than Just a Mirror by Jarkey Bacon. 12 minutes long, September 2020. I think this was his most watched video. I don't remember. But overall, this is great. I guess my only thing is that I've also already heard all these points, so it was a bit like I didn't really get anything novel from it, you know, when I'm watching it, because I had already heard you talk about these points at length. But it was a great video, and I can see why it's so popular. So I guess the gist of this video is that you talk about how people think that Hild is one note, and that she's a reflection of Prologue Thorfinn. And you make the point that she's not a reflection, she's a parallel, and she serves other purposes for the story. So again, in terms of presentation, fantastic. Editing's good as always. Colored thumbnail, fantastic. You know, going to the effort of coloring a thumbnail to prove, like, you know what, this Vinland Saga, it's not some fringe anime. It's deserving of like some professional design in the thumbnail. It looks great. Makes the video seem very reputable. Actually, the audio in this video is particularly bad. Like I went and I watched a few surrounding this, so I was like, oh, maybe he like got a new mic or something, but I don't know. I think it's just this video, the audio sounds a bit muffled and hollow, like worse than the previous one, the Making Fiction Real one. But I don't know, I'm sure this was some reason for this, which I'd be interested to hear if it was a funny reason, but I don't know. Later videos are fantastic audio, so don't worry about it. Again, these are strange critiques because these are things that you've already improved on, but In this video, the background music, it could be a bit louder. Like it was like it's quite emotional music you're using in this video. I know you use Avatar music at some point, one of the more emotional tracks in the soundtrack. But it's very quiet in the video itself, and it's, to me, when you've got emotional music, you can really use it to effectively convey your point. If it's like really loud and it like swells at certain points and becomes louder and it really gets to you emotionally. But I don't know, in this video, you kind of treat it as like a neutral background music, which I don't know, it's probably not the most effective use of the music, but you've improved since this video, so what's the point of me bringing this up? In terms of the points you make, you're essentially saying that most people see Hild as a mirror of Thorfinn, but one big difference is that Hild lost everything while Thorfinn didn't. Like he kind of chose to lose everything by leaving his family on Iceland. Makes sense. Cool point. You make a very, like, this might be something interesting that I hadn't considered before, which is that you say that people think that Hild is the only one that has to change in this Thorfinn-Hild relationship, and people assume that Thorfinn has finished growing. So I found this interesting because this is something that does cross my mind occasionally, at least it did when I was reading, where it's like, where is Thorfinn going to go? Like, what is he left to do? Like, after he finishes his farmland arc and he's all about peace and he has a mission, it every now and then it crosses my mind, like, is he growing? Like, where can he possibly go from here? You know, isn't he already perfect? And yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Like, I could empathize with those people, and you make I guess that you and as well as the discussions we've had, it makes a compelling like reason for why Thorfinn does have to grow and the things he does learn, like with his confrontation with Floki and how he's not perfect and he still has ways to learn. But another point about this is that you talk about how Thorfinn was. This is a point that we have briefly talked about, but you talked about it in more detail here, which is that Thorfinn was only able to go on his journey because Astlud died. And now that Thorfinn is Hild's Astlud, he can grow by finding a way to get Hild's forgiveness and escape this cycle of vengeance, and doing so in a way where he doesn't have to die, a way where he can surpass his father figure without having to die. So interesting point. And you convey, you kind of summarize something that I have heard before from you, which is that Hild has changed. And the way you say it is that Hild is trying so very hard to stay angry and distant, but it's getting harder and harder for her. And then you talk about how her language is slowly morphing and her actions are kind of changing a bit. And I think you convey that point very well. So one interesting thing for me is the fact that when I started this video and going into it, I just assumed this was made like ages ago, like maybe at the end of the Baltic War arc, the War in the Baltic, sorry, because I can't imagine a world where people like you framed this video as the like there's a few people out there, like a minority, a vocal minority who are against Hild and think she's like such a static character, but I can't imagine people thinking that in the Vinland arc, which is when this video is taking place. Like the Vinland's arc has already started and it's midway. Because she does so much. Like even the first chapter where they're sailing to Vinland and she's talking to Kali and she's opened up. Like there's so much happening already. So it's crazy that people still thought that at that point. So I just thought it was an interesting time capsule, like seeing what the state of the fandom was back then. It's crazy. What else? Presentationally, I thought it was interesting that you open for the first like 2/3 of the video using white background color, and then when you start talking about Astlud and some more darker and sadder stuff, you change the background to black for the last third of the video. Felt very natural. Like I didn't notice when the switch happened, but like by the end of the video when it was black and stuff, I just it stood out to me. I was like, oh, that's a neat little subtle editing thing. And I love the outro for this video. Like you got a bunch of fast edits of like different clips, and you got this loud music playing. It's a cool way to end the video. I love just generally in your videos, I love the loud, overpowering music. Like this is something I talked about once in a like one of my scripted videos where I think it was like all the anime I've seen part 2 or something, where it's like I wish more media, like more stories is what I was talking about back then, would use this overpowering music to convey an idea. And I feel like you do it sometimes where you'll, for instance, in your latest Vinland's Finest video, where you're in the intro, you're conveying this like this tense atmosphere with Astad and his men like going down to Anne's village, and you played this just loud music, and it really like sets the tone, and I like it a lot, and I wish more things would do that. But anyway, I guess the one last point, which is that I noticed towards the end of the video, you had this, like you had to clearly re-record or like insert a line, and it sounded like slightly different from anything else, and I just empathized so hard. Like, I hate when you have to do that, and you've like recorded a whole script and you're editing, or maybe you're in the video editing stage, and you're like, oh, my point, if I just had one more line I could put here, it'd make the point so much better, and then you record it and it doesn't sound the same, and you're like, oh, you know what, doesn't matter, I don't have time, I just want to upload it, and I could just relate so hard, and I thought it was so funny to hear that line. And you can hear a bunch of those if you go through my old Attack on Titan videos, like the early 2 or 3, I have a bunch of those. But yeah, overall, great video. Now, the third Jarkey Bacon video. Does Vinland Saga actually become less violent? This is 14 minutes long, and it's from December of 2021. And you use a face cam, and it looks great. Like your lighting and like the framing of like where you're positioned and all the background elements and stuff, it just looks great. Yeah, it looks very professional. Like, it's a well-made video. You should make more face. I haven't seen many of your other videos besides these 3, so if you do use more face cam, then great, because I think it worked out well. But this is a great video. I think this is, out of the 3 I've seen, I thought this was the best one. This was fantastic. Like, in terms of editing, obviously the other one, like even the Hild video, I think was probably the, like, it was edited very well, but this one, I just like the idea behind it. Like, I'm a man who loves his stats, you know, and I found this just so interesting, where the idea behind this video is that you hear a common critique of, I guess it's a critique of, or like a preparation of people, where they're like, oh, Vinland Saga is not going to be the same in the next anime season because it's less violent, and you wanted to see if that was true or not. So I thought that was a really interesting video idea. And it's something I'd be interested in making one day. Maybe not for Vinland Saga, but just in general, like a thorough exploration of the stats behind some manga series or some media franchise. I don't know, interesting. But yeah, I guess you say that this video was made as part of Pausen Select's Novid challenge or something, which is something I hadn't heard of, but you say that it had the theme of literature review, so I don't know, I just thought I'd point that out. Like, that just sounds interesting. Like, I'd be interested to join like a challenge like that. I think challenges are just real, like, even for instance the Vinland Saga, Vinland's Finest collaboration, I just find that so interesting, where you've got like you're making a video with a certain theme, an idea, and you're also, at the same time, you know that other people are going to make similar videos, so you kind of want to differentiate yourself a bit, you know, and I think challenge videos are just so interesting. So, and this was one of them, and it turned out really well, so well done. I wonder, was it a competition or something? Can you win? Because, I don't know, did you win? Maybe you would, it's a great video. So I made a guess when I was, before I started listening to the video. The question was raised, does Vinland Saga become less violent? And my guess initially about the whole series is that absolutely not, it does not become less violent, because the war in the Baltic is significantly more violent than anything else. It just felt like it was constant, felt like 30 chapters of just ongoing war inside that Jomsburg bit. You focus more particularly at the beginning of this video on the Farmland arc compared to the prologue. And in regard to that, I also still felt that the Farmland arc was more violent. Like, that was my guess, just because there's that massive battle at the end with Canute, and I just remember, like, I feel like in the prologue there just wasn't much mass scale, like, unless I'm forgetting, there wasn't that much mass scale combat. Like, the only thing that really sticks out to me is you got that siege of London, but even then, like, hardly anyone dies. And then you've got you get like one chapter with essentially in the prologue, it feels like there's a lot of scattered violence, like a scattered intense violence, where you've got like Thorkel's men in the burning forest. You've got Thorkel versus Astad's men, and like the scenes with Utley. But I don't know. My guess was just that, you know what, Farmland is more violent because it feels more sporadic in the prologue, whereas it feels more dense in the Farmland, even though it doesn't happen until the end. But boy, was I wrong, you know? it gets the prologue is more violent, slightly more violent. And I think I haven't written it here, but from memory, you also say that the even the Baltic Sea War, or the Eastward Expedition, because you treat that as an entire arc, even that's less violent than the prologue, and has less intensity of violence, I think. So I essentially, I just found it really interesting, because it was not at all what I was expecting. But that's the gist of it. What else is there? Oh, you also mentioned how Lady V Grey was adding stuff to the wiki, and she had like I had a lot of stuff she'd added. That was so cool. Like I think I'd be interested in adding stuff, because I've got like a bunch of notes and stuff I've made throughout my read through. I think I could have some valuable like things I could add. But that was really cool to see that. Yeah, the data itself was surprising. What else is there? You talk about what you think will be people's reactions to season 2, and you think that they've like kind of been primed for season 2, so they're probably going to enjoy it. Personally, I think people are going to love it. I don't know if it will be as popular. I also don't know how popular it was back in the day, because I only watched it last year, or maybe, yeah, last year. But I don't know, it's like the content is undeniably really high quality. So I can't imagine a world where people are criticizing it. Like, I don't know what they would criticize it for. So personally, I think it's just people are gonna love it. But anyway, I guess I did make a subnote here about like how I'm like, another comparison I can make is to Better Call Saul, where you've got like this like loud and action filled Breaking Bad, which is fantastic and everyone loves it obviously, and it became so popular. And then you've got Better Call Saul, which in my opinion is equally or maybe even better than Breaking Bad, but it doesn't have as much violence and not as much action, and it's more like a drama. And to me, people seem to love that equally as much, even though it's less popular. So I kind of feel like there's going to be a similar relationship to that kind of series. So I think it's going to be similar in season 2 of Vinland Saga. But anyway, I wrote here that people are insane. You did this poll that you ran, I think it was on Reddit, or maybe, I think it was Reddit, where you asked people, oh, what arc do you think is the most violent? And I wrote, when I got to that point, people are absolutely insane. The Eastern Expedition is easily the most violent, and it's not even close. And I was clearly proven wrong. But anyway, so just in general, the visuals are very professional quality. And the audio it's a lot better in this video, especially because you see your face, like you see the actual camera, so it kind of feels like it's coming from the camera. Like, I know it's not coming from the camera, but it kind of, it makes the audio seem a lot more natural when you also see your face, is what I'm trying to say. So I think it works a lot better in this than the other 2 videos. And you also see a little bit here, you talk about the audience's expectations and the Berserk comparisons. Which is, I also talked about it in this video when I was talking about one of Kyle's videos. But I don't know, to me, I just got I felt there was very, very few similarities between these two. So I just thought it was interesting that, like you say this thing, which is that, that Vinland Saga is kind of like that thing that you read after you catch up with Berserk. So I just thought it was interesting to kind of see what people thought back in the day, you know, when Vinland Saga and the anime community was a lot smaller. So yeah, overall, fantastic video. Probably my favorite of these 3. All right, now let's talk about The Sword of Thors, a Vinland Saga analysis by VinHard. So this is a 23-minute long video, came out in March of 2022, so very recent. And this is his first video, at least that I've seen on YouTube. So overall, actually, firstly, I want to talk about how at least I'll talk to you, VinHard, directly. I know hopefully you're listening right now. Maybe not. But I really love the spoiler warning you put at the beginning. And I just think it's really interesting, because like a lot of people will be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to talk about the prologue, so I'll give a prologue section spawn. Jesus Christ. I'm only talking about the prologue, so I'll give a prologue arc warning. But like what you say is really interesting, which is that like touching on a specific section of the story with future knowledge is kind of informed by your future knowledge. So as someone coming in expecting or digesting your thoughts on an early part of the story, you're kind of getting unintentional spoilers of what happens later based on the interpretation someone makes for this particular part of the story. So it's just interesting. Like the fact that any form of analysis where you know the future events is going to incorporate some information that you know about the future. So good spoiler warning. I thought that was great. But overall, this was a great video. I love VinHard videos. I've seen 2 of them now. I've seen this one and I've seen his Vinland's Finest one, and they're both fantastic. So if you guys, he's a very small. You've only got. I honestly don't remember. You have very few subscribers, but you should have a lot more. They're great videos. Everyone check him out. If you've read Vinland Saga and you haven't seen a VinHard video, what are you doing? Go watch it. So firstly, in regard to the presentation, so the editing and stuff, the ambient music choice is great. Like you have this like, I don't know how to describe it, but there's essentially ambient music in the background, and it makes me feel like I'm watching a VinHard video, you know, like it sets a particular tone that is unique to you. So I like that. Definitely stick with having some form of like distinct music that really makes it feel like I'm watching a VinHard video. I like it. Most of the time, I would say the way you show panels, like the panel selection especially, and the like size of panels and stuff, I think it works very well, and it fits very naturally to enhance the things you're saying. But early on, there was one point where I noticed you were flashing a lot of like single panels on the screen very quickly, while you were talking and making points about those panels, and it kind of felt like my eyes just glazed over, and I wasn't really paying attention to the panels because I was really trying to pay attention to what you were saying. So maybe try to avoid flashing panels very quickly, whereas where I can't read them fast enough, while also listening, I guess. But small point. Overall, the editing was great. What else is there? So I liked how you went over a few common interpretations of the. I guess before I talk about the point of this video was to talk about essentially what happened in the confrontation between Thors and Aslud in the prologue. So yeah, I liked how you talked about some of the common interpretations that you don't agree with, but that were common in the fandom. Because I'm not familiar with anything. I read Vinland Saga. I started like 2 months ago, maybe. So I didn't know anything about that. So I just thought it was really interesting to hear what people thought. So, and one of the things you said is that people thought that Thors died, and so through his death, he was proven to be wrong. Like he was proven to be over idealistic or naive, and that it's like his fault that Thorfinn went in his downfall. And you talk about how these people were expecting a cynical seinen manga that will criticize Thors' message, and what they got instead was something very different. So I just thought that was a really interesting point. You also make another point about how Thors is not willing to give up everything for his ideal. He is willing to protect his family, because without his family, he feels like he's going to fall back into becoming a warring Jomsviking. So I thought that was a really good point. Like that is something that I always talk about a lot in my like read through, where it's like family. Like Thors did want to become a warrior. Thors did want to become a true warrior, which is like to put violence behind you and always use like Thorfinn's first resort, for instance. But he always had his family as a priority, and he was willing to do these bad things to protect his family. So anyway, I also liked your take on the idea of the smell that Aslud talks about, or was it that Thors talks about, where you relate it to the how there's the common occurrence in the series where you've got a bunch of Viking leaders who are able to quickly read people. And you kind of talk about how the smell is something like that, and Thors has it, Aslud has it, Thorkel has it, Sven has it, and then you point out how Floki doesn't have it. I thought that was funny and great. What else? You also talk about how you, I don't remember if this was in the description or if it was just in the video, but you say how your English isn't that great, but I thought it was perfectly fine. There were a few moments where I was like, I rewinded just to double check like one particular word you were talking about, for instance, but overall, it's fantastic. You got nothing to worry about. Just articulate like you are, and it turns out great. What else is there? I guess there was one point which I thought was interesting, just because I forgot, which is that you say that Aslud doesn't learn that Thors spared all his men until Thors is dead. So I don't know. I completely forgot about that. You talk about how it's not that. like Aslad doesn't see that Thors has spared all his men and then think of him differently because of that. He sees Thors as intelligence and his critical thinking, and that's kind of what makes him seeing him as something special. He sees him, and I think I've quoted this, so hopefully you said this in the video. Powerful men that haven't been corrupted by moral values of the Vikings. So Aslad sees Thors as one of those men. So I thought that was a really interesting way to put it. Another thing you said is that something that I never picked up was a parallel between Thorfinn versus Thorkel and Aslad versus Thors. And Thorfinn in Thorkel, the fight I'm talking about there is in the snow towards the end of the prologue. But yeah, it's really interesting where you've got both these characters in Thors and Thorfinn stuck in unwinnable situations. Thors because he's surrounded by Aslad's men, and then Thorfinn because he's surrounded by Thorkel's men. And they're told that they're promised, by Aslad and Thorkel, that if they win the duel, then they'll be able to be let go and go free. So interestingly, you say that Aslad finds a way for Thorfinn to beat Thorkel without killing him. And that's because Aslad knows that if Thorkel dies, then his men won't honor Thorkel's promise. And I just thought it was really interesting. It's another similar to how Aslad manipulates Thorfinn in order to avoid violence. You've got another situation here where it's like Aslad is finding a way to avoid violence, and it's really interesting. So I guess now to talk about the meat of the video, which is that Aslad's offer of leadership to Thors. So you say that it comes right after Thors shows restraint in using violence. And you also make a very similar comparison where you've got Aslad putting Canute in a very similar position again, where he asks him, "Oh, strike me down," and then it's only when he sees Canute restrain his violence that he is actually going to go on his side and is willing to do it. So it's another test. I just never picked up that comparison there. I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, so Thors passes the test as well. Like Canute passes it, but also back in the day, Thors did pass it, but he at the same time refused Aslad's offer. So Aslad had no choice but to kill him because he had to appease his men. So yeah, really interesting. And then you talk about how Thors throws away his sword, and Aslad acknowledges that Thors has accepted his inevitable death. So Aslad affirms to Thors that the oath will be honored and his men will be withdrawn. So that's a very interesting take on the whole Aslad offering leadership to Thors, but then having to kill him anyway. Yeah, it's really interesting. So well done. And then in the end, you point out how Thors is an effective thematic core for the story, because Thors shows us as the readers that there is a way to find a good solution without resorting to violence. What you essentially say is that he was able to get Thorfinn and his friends and family out of harm's way without using violence. So it's a very effective thematic core. It's not impossible. So Thors can do it. He gets the best scenario out of this that he could have possibly gotten in the terrible situation he was in, and it's kind of what we're going to strive for the rest of the series, and I think it works very well. Interesting point. You also make a very interesting point between Thors and Aslad, where Aslad doesn't really want violence. He would prefer to do manipulation, negotiation, and strategy over fighting, which is just really interesting. I love all these interesting points you bring up about Aslad. But overall, this was a amazing first video. And I really hope you make more. And I know there's one more of your videos I haven't seen yet, so I'll definitely be watching that. And if I do another one of these videos, I'll definitely talk about it. But fantastic video. Well done. So I guess that's it. I have now commented on all the videos that I've seen. All the links for the videos will be in the description, so check them out. I've probably also put chapters and timestamps and stuff, but that's for me in the future to decide. So I guess let me know what you think. If this is good, if it's bad, if there's anything I should change, I guess. And just generally, if anyone thinks I should do another one. But that's it. So thank you for listening.